Mod tip number 1, strive to let go of comparison. Comparison is an extreme, and I think we can all relate to this one in some way or another. So here's the two extremes. Comparison, of course, is when you look sideways, right? When you look at others and you compare yourself to them. And it leaves you with one of two extremes. You either feel like you're better because you weigh out them and you weigh out you in that area and you think, oh, I'm better at that, or I'm prettier, or I'm smarter, or I'm whatever, fill in the blank. And so you feel like you're better. Or the other extreme is that you compare yourself to them and you're like, I am not. Like you feel like not only am I not better, I'm like way worse than them or whatever. So it's I'm either better or I'm worse. And neither one of those make a person happy. One of them kind of has a false sense of happiness to it. I think I'm better than, but I think we all can recognize, or most people can recognize, that it doesn't fill you. That feeling of being better doesn't actually satisfy you. It doesn't actually take away the void that's in your heart. And obviously not feeling like you compare and that you feel less than does the same thing. It's very destructive. It causes a lot of depression, and it often can shut you down from achieving what you could achieve. And so strive to let go of comparison. So the moderation tip, the middle ground, is what I want to share with you. You don't have to compare to others. You can actually be happy for other people's gifts that they're sharing with the world. And you can actually choose, if you would like, to emulate those things. Like if somebody has something that you really like, think, wow, I would love to have that, you can strive for that. But maybe what they have, you don't actually really care about. That's not something that's a priority to you. And so you don't actually have to even worry about going there at all if you don't want to. But you can still appreciate that they have that gift and that they have that thing to offer the world. And I think we all have a gift to offer the world. And it doesn't have to look like someone else's gift. And so that is one of the tips I would share with you, is strive to let go of comparison. And I use the word strive because it's a journey. This whole experience, this whole process is a journey. It takes time to practice letting go of comparison. It's not something that you instantly will do. It's something you'll have to catch yourself in and then say, oh, nope, and put up, can put up the stop sign there when you catch yourself doing it, because you're going to do it. It happens. Everybody has that. But that striving for moderation is actually the harder road, not the easier road, but it is the happier road. And so mod tip number 1, strive to let go of comparison. That's not a new concept. Probably none of these things are going to be new concepts, maybe some of them, but it is where happiness lies. I mentioned that I came from a background of extremes in my introduction, and my childhood had some extremes of problems. I don't really want to go into all of them right now, but my answer to that was I'll just throw myself into the extreme of perfectionism. And that I did that through my church. Now, my church didn't teach that, but that's what I thought, because I was living in an extreme and I didn't understand where the moderation was in being a disciple of Jesus Christ and what that should look like. I just literally jumped from one extreme to the other. I didn't want to feel less than anymore. I wanted to feel up here because I thought maybe that would help me feel better about my life, about myself. And so I threw myself into being the best Christian I could be. And in that process, I moved into another extreme and I was not happy. In fact, I remember one day sitting in church and I had, I believe, a couple kids at this point, and I was sitting there listening to the speaker, and the man that was speaking said something to the effect of, based on what we know, meaning what Christians know, based on what we know, we should be the happiest people on earth. And I looked at him and I thought to myself, then why am I not happy? Because I was doing the checklist. I could have checked every little thing that they asked me to do. I did it, and I did it with full vigor. And I could check it all. I could check all the boxes. but I was miserable. I was so unhappy. And it was because I hadn't learned what I needed to learn yet. And I was jumping from one extreme to the other, trying to compensate for feeling low. I wanted to feel better. And I didn't know there was a middle ground. So one of the middle grounds is letting go of comparison, striving to live in the moderation of, I don't need to compare. We're all God's children. We're all just as capable in the long run as the other person. Now, if you don't have a Christian background or perspective, that's going to be a little tricky, possibly for you. But I have to speak from what I understand and what I know. And I know that this life is not the end all be all. And so that also helps me let go of comparison, because we learn that we are all meant to become like our Heavenly Father. We have the ability to become a joint heir with Christ, it talks about in Romans, and that we can receive all that He has and all that He is, not just what He has, but who He is. And the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Well, Christ is not an extreme. He is the balance. He is the moderation. And so I have learned that I don't need to worry about it. Maybe not everything I'm going to master here. It doesn't really matter. I know that there's time. I've got plenty of time to accomplish anything that I need to accomplish. And this life has its specific learning experiences for me and for you. And so my journey is perfect. Your journey is great. It's perfect for you. And so you don't need to look sideways. You don't need to compare. Okay. I don't want these to be super long, but I do have one story to share on that topic. So years ago, one of my daughters was serving a mission for our church, and she had a companion that her mother had a dream. So this is kind of like, but this dream was shared with her daughter, and then my daughter, and then it was shared with me. So it's kind of become my dream, because when I was shared with me, I could see it. I could see it play out, and the Spirit has taught me so much about it since then that I feel like I own it. It was for me too, and that's why I'm sharing it with you, because I want you to kind of own it too. So here you go. So in this dream, the woman was planting a row, think of a farmer's field and all those rows that they have, right? And she was planting in this field, and she looks up and she sees these other people planting their rows. So everybody, there's all these people on these different rows in the field, and they're planting, and they're all way farther ahead of her, way up there. And she's and then she notices this man walking right beside her, planting his row, working on the row next to him, or next to her. And he looks at her and he says, "It's okay. We'll take it at your pace." And she was like, okay. And so they get to, time goes by, they get to the end of the row, and he tells her, "Now turn around and sorry, okay, one more thing I forgot. Gotta back up. Sorry." So before she did that, so right after he says, "It's okay, we'll take it at your pace," she actually turns around and she looks at what she's already done, where she's already been, what she's already planted, and it's a mess. It is just like this. It's so messy. And I think we can relate to that. And so he just comforted her and calmed her, and it was kind of "We'll just take it at your pace, it's okay." And so they get to the end, and he says, "Now turn around and look." And so obviously this is the Savior speaking to her. And so she turns around and she looks at her row, and it was perfectly straight. And the point of the dream is that He will straighten out our rows. That's the Lord's job. The Lord's job is to perfect us. Our job is to stick with Him and to work and take it at our pace and not look sideways and compare ourselves to others. So since having that shared with me, I've had other thoughts as well. One was that she probably didn't notice that there were other people behind her. You know what I'm saying? To some people, she looked like she was further ahead. But to her perspective, she was only noticing the people ahead of her. That's comparison. And also, when she looked back on her row, she saw how messy it was. And when she looked at the other people's rows, from her perspective, their rows looked straight, but they were just as messy as hers. If she had stood on their row and looked at it, she would have seen that theirs were And so that's one thing. And then the last thing is that if we'll stick with him, he will perfect it. He will perfect all of it and make it beautiful and lined up. We will reach the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. That's the plan. But we've got to trust him. We've got to trust him with our rows. And that means we have to let go of comparison. Because comparison, as they often say, is the thief of joy. And that is absolutely the truth. And so we've got to let go of that. And we've got to trust him. God is not sitting there judging us based on what other people are doing. He is just there to help us progress and grow to the level we want to. And that's another key. We have to want it. And if we don't, he's not going to force us. He just doesn't work that way. So, mod tip number 1, strive to let go of comparison. I look forward to sharing tip number 2. Stay tuned.